Hi, mystery writers. Welcome to Write a Killer Mystery, where we talk about making a good mystery great. And today I want to talk about something that's often overlooked but is very important, and that is the victim in your mystery novel. First, I want to thank my patrons on Patreon for their continued support of this video series and my mystery writing. And if you would like to join us, there's a link in the description below. Okay, so why would someone want to kill your mystery victim? This is actually the fulcrum of your entire mystery story. Your victim is so important. Everything about them is what your detective has to discover, including why someone, the villain, would want to kill them. They are actually a main character in your story. So even though they don't speak, they don't have a speaking part, uh, their background powers the puzzle of your mystery. So the more you know about the victim in your mystery, the easier time you will have creating clues and suspects for your detective to discover. Essentially, without the victim, there is no mystery. So the complications you create to confound your detective all revolve around the victim, and each suspect, including the villain, had a relationship with that victim. Your victim is the mystery puzzle foundation. As a writer, you need to build a strong character background for your victim. I can't stress that enough. Because even though they have no speaking part and appear as a corpse, the victim is that mystery foundation. Suspects derive from their circle of friends and enemies, and your sleuth learns about the victim's quirks, their likes, their dislikes, and personality traits with the information that they receive from the suspects. And essentially, the first half of your mystery is spent discovering that victim's world, who they were, what they did, who they know. And the reader learns through the clues and suspects about the victim's circumstance and their relationship to other people, including the villain, and the world they inhabit. And your reader follows your sleuth through the investigation. So along with the sleuth, your reader forms opinions about the victim from the information that you dispense, right? And were they a despicable human being, a seemingly virtuous soul, a scoundrel? Everything that your reader learns about the victim comes from the information your detective garners, and the detective garners that information from what you, the writer, know about the victim. So the reader, like the sleuth, tries to guess why the victim was killed and who did it. That's their fun in reading your mystery. So your victim is really much more than just a dead body. Something they did triggered a murder, and you, the writer, need to know why. You need to know, why would someone kill the victim, right? So there are really quite a few things that you need to know about your victim. When you create a rich character background for your victim character, you are actually giving yourself details that form the clues and the relationships with the suspects and the hidden traits that your detective must find that relate to the villain. So there's three key things you really need to know and expand in your character background. The first is their personality. What were they like? It's the basis for all of their relationships, and it's also the basis of any actions that they took that your detective may discover. So, as your detective discovers more about the victim, they're able to form their personal perception of the victim, and they're going to do that through all the details that you have put together from your character background. So, from likes and dislikes to quirks and irritating traits, the more you add a no, the more the right detail comes into your story. So, by developing that rich background for your victim, you really are arming yourself with lots of details to put into your story, so you won't be searching for things to do. You already know more than your detective about your victim. Um, so, for example, it could be a relationship the victim had with someone that was okay on the surface, but underneath had hidden darkness. So the more that you know about your victim's personality, the easier it is for everyone the detective encounters to comment about their personality. You know, they worked hard, they worked 16 hours a day, or whatever it is you want, traits you want to give to your victim. So you want to know their personality, and you also need to know very well what their relationships were with the other people in their life, many of whom are going to become suspects. And your detective spends a lot of time discovering those relationships that the victim had. And once your detective discovers the ties to other people, they must sort out how well each suspect knew the villain and what their relationship was, and whether that relationship was bumpy or smooth, and what aspects of the relationship each suspect character tries to hide from the detective. So you have a lot to play with. And then, of course, tangential to the relationships is the victim's actual ties to the villain, because at the heart of the relationships is that relationship between the victim and the villain, because something about their personality triggered that villain's motivation to kill. That something is the big why of your mystery story. So unless you go deep into the victim's personality, the why may seem flat to your reader because it doesn't trigger a strong motivation in the villain. So you want that why to be genuine and deep and aggravating and motivating. All right. So whether the killing is spontaneous because the victim did something at that moment that just the villain couldn't take it anymore and push them over the edge, or whether that that hatred and motivation is really deep-seated, resulting in a deliberate plan. Something about your victim triggered the villain, and you really need to understand that as the story creator to make all of your mystery revolve around what that trigger was. So let's talk a little bit about how to use what you know about the victim, those personality traits and those relationships. How do you actually use them once you've built your background? Um, you'll be able to continuously plant seeds for your detectives. It's one of the things that doing that victim background will really help you write your mystery, because you're going to have all these details that you can put in at any time that you need them into your story. And because the big question for your detective and your reader is, why would someone want to kill the victim? So you want to use what you know about the victim to keep raising questions. That's part of our job as mystery writers. We're creating those questions in our readers' minds. So first is there's the things that we often think about, and beginning writers think about this a lot, the physical details. What the victim leaves behind creates a wealth of clues for your detective to investigate, and each discovery raises questions for your detective and your reader. It can be odd articles of clothing in the victim's closet, and it's like, well, why is that there? All right, to uh, mm, you just want to raise questions in your reader's mind, and depending on your story, the details that you use are going to be the ones that raise those questions. What is this strange physical thing that was the victim's or is tied to the victim that raises a question? So questions keep your readers reading, so you want lots of them. And then with the relationships, um, they are the meat and potatoes of your mystery story. Um, your detective must first discover who had relationships with the victim, and then through all their interviews, um, your detective determines who is an actual suspect and why. And suspects may have contradictory pictures of who the victim was, and one person may have liked them and was very loyal, and another person didn't particularly like your victim's personality traits, and has some reservations about who they are. So when your detective interviews these two different suspects, they're presenting two varied visions of who that victim was, and your detective and your reader are going to have to figure out which is closer to the truth. All right. So those suspects are use their personal interactions to confuse your detective with the details about the victim. Remember, your your suspects may have their own personal reasons, have nothing to do with the crime, for keeping information hidden from your detective. So each suspect paints a picture that's different, from slightly different to radically different, um, from all of the other suspects. And this is where you build that rich body of questions for your reader, because now your detective has to sort through all of this information to figure out what it is that really matters. So, as you proceed through this story, you'll find that the more you know about the victim, the easier it will be to create those clues and the different interpretations of the victim as your detective interviews the suspects. So I think the major point for today is you want to consider your victim a main character in your story. The background work that you put into your mystery character will pay off with dividends as you actually write. And you'll have differing details to use as clues and as touch points for each suspect. So even though your victim may not have a speaking part in your mystery, if you consider them a main character with all the background work required, you'll have a rich and varied mystery story that keeps your readers guessing. Okay, I hope I hope that helps. I just the, the the victim. The more work you do on your victim, the richer your mystery stories is going to be. So thank you for that. And once again, I want to thank Audible for sponsoring Write a Killer Mystery. And if you're already using Audible to listen to mystery stories and other things, you know how great and fun it can be. And if you haven't used Audible to listen to stories with really read by very talented narrators, um, there's a link in the description below to a 30-day free trial. So I encourage you to check out Audible, start listening to stories, and enrich your life. All right, thank you very much. Give your victim lots of details and keep writing. I'll see you next time.